Hey guys, it's Ben from Woodshop. Today I'm going to do a video on how to make the threaded wasteboard for your Hobby CNC, specifically Shapeoko 3. I have a lot of questions. I'm going to walk you through the steps on how I do it. Really easy, just takes a little bit of knowledge. So I'm going to take you through the steps on how to get it off the software, lay down the piece of MDF you're going to cut it out of, and cut it out. So follow along. First thing you need to do is get a 3/4 piece of MDF, and we're going to cut it to size. Now the Shapeoko XXL uses a 32 by 32. Now a lot of people ask me, why is it 32 by 32? Because the machine is much bigger than that. And you can see down here, just because the machine is 32 by 32 doesn't mean the cutting area is. When the router is at its furthest point, it only reaches to here. It will not cut over here. It will not cut down in the back, and it will not cut on the left. Now it can come past the front, but we don't want to overhang an MDF piece because there's a metal piece in front of it. So the benefit of having a supplementary wasteboard on top is that you can actually overhang things because the piece will be over this metal piece. Also, when you get done, you can see I've carved into some, but eventually you're going to surface it so often that you're going to go down, 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 and you'll be so thin you want to remove this. So the great thing is we just remove the screws that are holding it down, and then we can screw on a fresh new piece, and it doesn't destroy the bottom wasteboard, and we don't have to take that off, re-square the whole machine, and put things out of whack. So you notice I already have a wasteboard on here, and I'm not going to take it off for the purpose of this video, but just assume this wasn't here if you're starting from scratch. But the first thing you want to do is measure from the very left to the very right of your machine, and we need to find center of the machine. So on a Shapeoko XXL, measuring all the way across from just going off the wasteboard, it's 42. So we know the center is going to be 21. So you're going to make a mark on your wasteboard, 21. That'll give you the center line of your machine. Then we got to go to the MDF we cut, and I have a piece right here. We cut it 32 by 32, and you're going to go ahead and find the center of this. That would be 16. So what you're going to do is you mark these lines, the line on the MDF wasteboard that you just cut, and then the line on your wasteboard that comes with the machine, or the very center of your machine if you found it, make a mark. And you're going to line that up to where they touch each other. And then you're going to attach this piece onto the MDF so we can cut out all of the holes. And I'm going to show you how I do that for this. So what I like to do when I'm attaching this, really simple, and I did this a lot when I didn't have a clamp system, is I like to take my brad nailer or pin nailer. Actually, the smaller you can get, the better. But I have brad nails in there with an inch long brads. It's a 18 gauge. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to shoot brad nails directly through the wasteboard that we just cut 32 by 32. I'm going to shoot it into almost the extreme 4 corners, and that'll allow this to be held down and cut. And when we're done, we can easily pry it right off and flip it over into place. Let me show you how I did it. Okay, once we have that in place, we know we can move it around. It's not going anywhere with just 4 of those. And we're not too concerned at where they are. The more extreme, the better, because that way our holes won't go into it. If our cutter does happen to hit those, it'll be okay. They're so small in metal, it'll just cut them right off. So don't worry about that. Just try to get it to the extreme edges to avoid them. Now we're secured. We'll go over to Carbide Create, and we'll make the file, save the G-code, and then we'll come back and cut out the holes. Remember, this is the underneath, so the way I designed the file, it's upside down. When we cut it out, we'll flip it and it'll go onto the left side. So let's go to Carbide Create. So we're back at the computer and now we're ready to get the threaded wasteboard file. So you'll open up your internet web browser of choice. I just happen to be Chrome. And you're either going to get it from two different places. So the first place you can get it is from my Etsy shop. Here it is, etsy.com/shop/Ben Myers Woodshop. This is what it looks like. And you're going to see some featured files. And then down here, you're going to see where all the things are that you can download. And you're going to grab the threaded wasteboard file. Now I have the XL file. It's called threaded wasteboard file for the XL. And then I have the XXL, which is what we're going to do today, right here. So we're going to click the XXL. You can see there's the file. This includes the SVG and the C2D. So SVG is used with pretty much every cam out there, and the C2D, that's the Carbide Create file. So if you only have Carbide Create, that's what you'll open it in. So you go ahead and purchase that, and it will email you deliver these two files. Now, if you'd like to get it for free, you can go to my website. It's www.myerswoodshop.com/blog/wasteboard. That will get you to the wasteboard file. It'll also show all the links to the hardware you need right down here. But up here is where the file is located. You'll notice I'll have one link right here for the wasteboard file, and then down here just pointing you to the Etsy file. So you can't just click on this file on my website. For some reason, my web host is weird. If you click on it, you're going to get some weird text. So don't click on it. Right next to it, it says right-click Save As, really big. So on the link, you'll right-click, Save Link As. It'll pop up right here. And if it doesn't for you as a C2D, you'll rename the end .c2d. But I'm going to save this at the desktop. So I'll click Save. And you can see we've downloaded there. So we're done with internet. We can close that out. And here is the file. Now notice that if I double click on that file and I load Carbide Create from the file, after it starts loading, it looks like it's empty. There's nothing here. You cannot open a file by double clicking on the file in Carbide Create. It's odd, no other program works like that, but Carbide Create is that way. So if you download my file and you can't find it, or you said the file's empty, it's actually not. It's just you cannot open it through that. You actually have to open Carbide Create, and then at the very top, click Open, and then browse for the file. Here it is on my desktop, Myers Woodshop Wasteboard. Double click it, and now it loads the file in. It's a very important step. So when you load the file in, it may not interact with you for a while. I'm trying to scroll right now and you can see my circle. That is because it's doing a ton of calculations for this program in the background. Carbide Create is a little limited, so this file is a lot of work for it, and you can see it's not responding. It's actually doing calculations in the background that you can't see, so don't just start clicking a million times. Just let it catch up to itself. I have a more powerful computer, so it won't take that long, maybe about 30 seconds to a minute. If you're using an older shop computer, it could take several minutes for it to catch up, but it eventually will. And in the interest of time, I'll skip right here to where it catches up. So you can see it, I didn't need to, it just actually catched up right there. So now I can manipulate the file, and I'll click Reset View up here, and it makes it a little bit bigger. So you click on the gear icon over here, you can see I have a 31 by 31 piece of wood. I actually cut a 32 by 32 on the table saw for this, so I would start with 32 by 32, but our wasteboard is starting at 31 by 31. Also, please note, you see this center right here, this red dot. Also over here, toolpath center is 0. You will not start in the bottom left corner with this file. You're actually going to find 0 and start your file right there. So make sure that you zero from the exact center of the wasteboard and not the piece of wood that you're going to cut. Why did I cut a 32 by 32 piece of wood when actually the file's 31 by 31? I like to give a little extra wiggle room. If you want to change the file, go ahead for yourself. I gave myself a little extra wiggle room. You will lose a little bit if you attach the fence onto this, but how often are you really cutting the biggest extreme size that you can go? So I just gave a little room to work with, safety zone, if you will. Either way, 31 by 31 starts in the center. We're going to hit OK. And then at the top left, we're going to hit Toolpath. And you can see now we have tools over here. Again, this may freeze up on you right in this section. If it does, just wait and it will finally catch up. If your toolpaths aren't showing, it means you have an older version of Carbide Create. Please visit their website to download the newest version and it will show the toolpaths. So if they don't show up, visit Carbide Create and download the newest version, restart your computer, and then reload the file. So you can see the first file, I have the large holes for the bottom of the T-nuts that are going to go in there. And they go 0.08 depth. So you're going to pocket out a hole 0.08. And then the bottom one is the through hole that'll go all the way in the center for the bolts to go through, and that's going 0.76. Now this assumes your MDF is perfectly 0.75 3/4 all the way through. May not be. You may have to come back and do it a little bit with a hand drill if your MDF isn't right or your bed isn't level. Just know, why didn't it cut all the way through? It's because there's something unlevel, and that's not uncommon. You're okay there. This is the reason why we're making this file and then flattening afterwards. Also, please note, for the large holes that's going to cut first, we're going to have a plunge rate of 25 and a feed rate of 75 using the 201 cutter that came with your machine. Please use an upcut bit for this. When you're drilling holes, it is not good to use a down cut. It forces all the chips down and you're just re-drilling, and it's possible it could catch fire. Make sure to use an upcut bit, and the 201 that came with your machine is an upcut bit. If you check out the through holes, you can see the plunge rate is different, but everything else is the same using that 201, the 1/4 inch bit. You can use any 1/4 inch bit, but just the 201. I designed it so if you only had the one bit that came with your machine, it would work. Plunge rate is 5 here. Since we're just plunging straight down and there's very little area for the chips to evacuate, it's going to go slower when it does the main through holes. That allows more time for the chips to evacuate. This is a side note, and if you feel comfortable, if you have an 1/8 inch bit and you know how to manipulate the file here, all these settings, use an 1/8 inch bit to drill the holes. Drilling is never good, and you really like to use a much smaller bit to drill the holes, but I designed it to where if you had the 201 and that's all you had, it would work. And it will work, and I will do this for the purpose of the video. Anyways, so we'll hit OK. Really, if you came in, you didn't have to do any of this or look at any of these settings. All you have to do is come down here and click on Show Simulation. It will show these. If you don't have the Show Toolpath and Show Rapids, it means you're using an older version of Carbide Create and it's outdated. Please update. So if I deselect those and I change this to MDF, you can see this is what the file is going to look like. And again, we're cutting the underside, so what's over here will actually go onto the left side, and it'll be flipped over. So we'll just hit Save G-Code down at the bottom left. And we're going to save this G-code to our desktop. In my case, you can notice that the Carbide G-code is going to end in a .nc. If you try to load the Carbide Create file into Carbide Motion, nothing will happen. You have to create the G-code first from Carbide Create to make the cutter work. So we're just going to call it Wasteboard. And when we hit save, it'll save the G-code. We can now close this out, and you can see over here I have 2 different icons. That's because I'm running the most updated version of Carbide Motion as well, And now there are two different icons for two different programs. So we're going to want to open Carbide Motion. That is the G-code sender for our Shapeoko. And if you're not using this file on a Shapeoko, you'll open your G-code sender of any kind. easel will work. If you're using an Xcarve, it can import G-code. Universal G-code sender will use the G-code, but since I have a Shapeoko, I'm just going to use Carbide Motion. So we didn't double-click the file, we double-clicked on Carbide Motion. We need to turn our computer on and click connect to router. We need to turn on our Shapeoko or CNC and then connect to the cutter. And of course, we're going to click on load file, and this is where we'll load the file of we just created. I called it Wasteboard. Notice there's two different ones. The .c2d opens Carbide Create. That's how you make the G-code. And the Wasteboard.nc, that is the G-code, and that's the one we're going to want. So we'll double click on that, and you can see it has now loaded this. If I click on info and load one more time, it'll show up Wasteboard.nc. That is what is loaded and ready to cut on our machine. So I'll go ahead and click on jog, and then we'll click on initialize machine, and this will home the machine to the back right and get everything started. So we'll go ahead and do that. All right, our machine is now homed. So we're going to go ahead and rapid position. And a lot of people think you can just click on this C right here to go to the center of that wasteboard, and that is incorrect. This C is not the center of the cutting area. It's just some sort of point that's relative to center. Do not rely on C to go to center. So we're going to click on S to go all the way to the front, and when we click on that, it moves our machine to the front so we can change the bit out if for some reason you have another bit inside the cullet other than the 201 or a 1/4 inch upcut bit. Go ahead and change that out. Now let's go back to the machine and center our board. All right, so we're back over at the CNC. Now we need to find our center mark. And to do this, all you need is a straight edge. I'm going to use my woodpecker ruler. And all we're going to do is lay one point at the very corner of the top and one point at the corner of the bottom. Make sure those are straight. And that's our straight line. We get our pencil and we make a line in the center. I made it about a foot long. Then we're just going to flop it over, turn it around, do the exact same on the other diagonal. So there's one mark. There's the other mark. And we'll make another line, and that gives us dead center of this material. So that gives where the two lines cross, gives us a point. We're going to go ahead and bring the cutter forward and zero our X and Y on that point, and then we'll raise and lower the Z axis with either our touch probe or a piece of paper to go ahead and get our correct height. So let's do that. So you can see there's my mark, and if I zoom out, you can see there we are. So we're going to go ahead and bring our cutter right to that point. I'm going to use my remote to go ahead and bring it forward. If you haven't seen my video on that, go ahead and click up here on this card and you'll check it out. So here we go. Bringing it forward. All I'm doing is pushing down on the keypad. I'll push 3 to get a little bit more accurate. And I'll bring it down. So right now I'm just kind of moving it to make sure I got it centered pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and use the touch probe to get Z. Alright, so I'm back at the computer. I just got done probing the Z height. If you didn't have this, you're going to do it manually with a piece of paper. Once you're done probing the Z height, go ahead and done. And then we're going to go down to set 0. So I've probed the Z height, it's at 31. That's how far up it is after it probes. So if you have an even number here with no crazy decimals, you know you've probed correctly. The X and the Y have not been probed, so we need to set that manually, which we've already jogged it right over the X on the wasteboard we drew. So all we're going to do is click 0X and 0Y. And now this is our X and our Y right where we positioned right over that X. We leave 0Z. If you haven't zeroed Z and you've done it with a piece of paper, you're going to click 0Z to get your 0. Then all you'll do is click Done here. And then I like to raise my Z-axis up far, just so I know it starts off far away. And then we click Done here. And then we're going to go back over to Run. And we're ready to go ahead and cut the wasteboard. But for me, I'm going to attach my Suck-It dust boot because this is MDF. It is terrible. This is going to make a incredible amount of dust. If you are in your shop and don't have breathing protection, please, please invest in it. It is going to be a very large amount of dust, so just go ahead and be prepared. I'm going to go attach the dust boot, and then I'll come back and we'll run the file. All right, if you have a DeWalt router like me, you're going to be about speed 3 on the router. That's the dial. Never turn it up past that. On this one, we're going to hit speed 3. So we're going to go ahead and click Start. And when we do that, it's going to bring up this saying Insert the right tool. We need the 1/4-inch square mill. So make sure that's inserted. If you haven't already turned on the router, make sure you turn it on before you do this, just to be safe. I didn't do that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and then I'm going to hit continue, and you'll watch a time lapse of it cutting, hopefully, if everything works out. All right, vacuum's on, router's on, hit continue. Always finger over the pause button to make sure it's going to go right. And here it goes. Alright, so our cut has finished. My camera didn't capture all of it, so there was kind of cuts pieces. But we finished the cut, and now what I like to do is take a little bit of sandpaper. This is a Gator sanding block, 220 grit. And I go ahead and just hit it real quick, one time across it. And that's it. It got all the little fuzzies off. Because we're using an upcut bit, all of the fuzzies come up. So we get all the fuzzies off. And after that, we want to just pry up the wasteboard. If you screwed it down, you'll undo the screws. If you did brads like I did, go ahead and pry it up. If your circles are not perfect circles and they're coming maybe out as ovals, there's two things that we can look at that might not be tight, and that'll help you correct the circle issue. Let's take a look at the machine. The first thing we want to check is the belts on every axis. We got this one, and this one. And they should be pretty tight, like a guitar string. I can fit my finger in there, but there's a little bit of a twang. And then there's a belt up in here that you can't see in here. That should also be tight. That's probably not the one that's throwing it off because it only goes up and down. One of these is probably not tight, the X and Y axis. Also, you have the eccentric nuts on the V wheels. Now these turn, when you turn them one way or another, it moves the nut in and out, and it tightens this machine against the rail. So if one is loose and one is tight, it may be cockeyed and it could move like this. And as it's moving, the circle isn't becoming a perfect circle. So you want to tighten those to where the wheel pushes in that way and just perfectly squeezes the rails as it's going up. You have eccentric nuts here and one over there. Again, these are going to squeeze. And then you have them also over here that you want to squeeze, and then on the carriage, squeeze. Check the nuts, check the belts, and if those aren't tight, tighten them up, and that should correct your circle issue. If not, you probably have something major going on, and go ahead and email Carbide Create, and they will help you. Okay, so I have a crowbar if you have anything to pry this off. Again, remember, I shot into a wasteboard that was already there. If you're doing this for the first time, you're going to have no wasteboard underneath. So you're going off the MDF that's attached to the machine. So you just want to get that in between the board. And since it's just bradded in there, it simply pops off. Super easy. I barely had to push at all. And remember, what we just cut is the underneath. So we're going to take it off. You're going to flip it around and this will be the top. Now, I know what you're going to say, whoa, Ben, you don't have any holes all the way through. And you're correct, I don't. I have a few right in the center, and then I don't have any on the other side. I didn't want to go all the way into the wasteboard I had below. You may not have that issue. Also, this MDF may have been thicker than 0.75. So measure your MDF before you edit the program. If you don't do any editing, you may have to come back, like I'm going to show you, and go ahead and just drill out all the holes that didn't go all the way through. So let me show you that. So what you want to do is get your drill set, and you're looking for the 1/4 inch, because that's the 1/4 inch that I use to drill these holes. So we'll go ahead and get our 1/4 inch drill bit and get our drill. So I got our drill, we're going to put it into the drill. And then we're going to go over and flip it back over to the underneath and drill through. So I'm going to be using a table, get 2 tiny strips, and put it wide out like that. That way when you drill through, you don't drill all the way through. And go ahead and put your board on top, take your drill, and go ahead and drill all the way through. If you use my brad method, these brads are now sticking up into the air. I'm going to take a pair of pliers or pull them out, or snippers. I just take a snip and I go ahead and pinch them right there on all four corners. Or you can hammer them out, pull them out. The next thing you'll want to do is get a drill with a drill bit and drill holes in the corners so you can attach this wasteboard to the wasteboard of your CNC machine. I like to use this bit. It's from Tools Today, a Mana tool. It is a non-marring drill bit with a countersink, so I don't have to use two different operations in one. You'll want to drill a hole through for the screw, but then you'll want to countersink, and countersinking is making a bigger hole on the top so that the screw head will go down into the wasteboard, because we don't want it sticking up in case when we carve, we don't want to accidentally carve that screw head. So just like the underneath T-nuts are going to go up through and only come about halfway, we want the screws to also stick up about halfway through the wasteboard. So I'm going to go ahead and drill into my four corners with this drill bit. And we don't really need to worry about the position of these four screws. We just want to be in a corner of somewhat, because it doesn't really matter. Nothing else is going to line up. We're just going to line up the wasteboard on center and then screw in, and we'll be good. So go ahead and repeat that process for the four. Make sure you countersink halfway down and you'll be ready to attach to your wasteboard. So we just finished all the holes on the wasteboard. We're finished with that part. Now we need to insert all these little T-nuts. So I put links in the description and on the files on my Etsy and blog. They keep changing how many are in a bag. So if you click on that link, it may be 50, it may be 100. Just make sure you buy enough bags to total how many holes you have. And the extra large, which is what we're doing, that has 240. So you'll need 240 of these. You'll probably end up buying 250 or 300. It can't hurt to have some extra. So just be mindful of that. You need a whole bunch, and they keep changing the amounts on that link. So this is what the T-nut looks like up close. You can see it has some prongs. It's got a wider base, and then it's got a threaded insert there. So we're gonna go ahead and insert it like this into the wasteboard. Down below, we're gonna hammer them in. It's just a simple hammer, and they grab with these teeth. And then our bolts will come down through the wasteboard and our clamps and hold on to it that way. So let me give you a tip about installing these. So when you go to install these T-nuts in the wasteboard, you're just going to be hammering. And if you put it on a solid piece or your workbench or something like that, when you hammer, it's going to bounce. And when you hammer one in right here and you go to hammer the next one in, and because of that bounce, it's going to bounce the other ones out. I'm going to put this piece of insulation down on my table that I'm going to work on. That way it deadens the blow every time I hit, and hopefully it doesn't vibrate all the other ones out. The key when installing these is making sure that when you put these in and you hammer them down, that they're all the way flush down in with the wasteboard, and when you run your hand over it, it's not bumpy, because that will throw off the wasteboard flattening. So make sure that they're hammered all the way down and true down in there. So just take the pointy part, stick that in the hole, take your hammer, and make sure you're in. And that's it. Just repeat the process for all your holes. So you can see how much I did. This is 100. I only have a bag of 100, and the rest of them get here tomorrow from Amazon. So I'm just going to show you this. I'm going to cut to when it's all finished, and I'm going to show you how to install it onto your wasteboard. You're almost done. This sucks. So mine's already attached to my wasteboard, and I'm building this for someone else, so I'm not actually attaching it, but I'm just going to show you how you do it. So when you lay it down, make sure if you want if you're going to use the L fence that I have in the other files, and you want the bottom left to be your X and Y constant, you're going to want to make the odd-shaped ones that are on two different sizes. One's going to be going this way, one's going to be going this way. That's going to put your L there. And if you want it at the back right, just rotate it. I designed it to be front left, so if you want to stick with the design. Now we're going to take that line you made that was right in the center of the wasteboard in the front, and you're just going to line that back up with the line you put that was right in the center on the front metal rail. Match those up together and pull this, your wasteboard MDF, all the way up against this front rail. You don't want any gap. We're going to square off that front rail. So pull it all the way forward, center it, and then go ahead and come back with your screws and go in those four corners that we drilled with the countersink bit. Screw them down in the four corners. Now some of you may say, well, what if there's flex in the center? And if you want to do more holes, do more for your screws, go ahead and put more, and that way you'll know you're good. I've been running 4 and it seems just fine. I may add 2 in the center to bring it up. But hey, I run it with 4 and it works fine. If you want to get more precise, go for it. But once you install those 4, you're good. You have installed the wasteboard. The hard part is over. Now you can cut the clamps, the cam clamps, the L-shaped clamps, and the big fence clamp. But before you do any of that, go ahead and run your wasteboard flattening. So what you want to do first is you want to tram the machine, then you want to make the wasteboard, then you want to flatten the wasteboard. So that's 1, 2, 3 in order. I have a flattening file if you need that. It's really simple. Just make a big square and go ahead and pocket it out. And I go down just a tiny bit each time. I'm going to put a link in the description below for the 2 surfacing bits that I recommend. One is a cheaper white side, and if you're not going to be doing much surfacing, that's a great one. The other one is the one I personally use, and the program is made for. It's an Amana tool where you can replace the carbide inserts. It's a bigger chunk up front, but it'll save you down the road because you don't have to replace the whole tool. You just replace the inserts, and if you do a lot of flattening, it's really the way to go. So run your flattening, and then you are ready to 100% start carving. And eventually it'll start looking like this. That just means you did something right. Get used to making indentations in your wasteboard. It's just part of CNCing. You're going to cut through, and you're going to make a mistake, and that's okay. The T-nuts that are in here are reusable. Getting them out is going to suck, but if you ever need to make another wasteboard, pop them out. You already have the T-nuts and just reuse them. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, leave the comment down below. Send me an email, write on my blog posts, find me through my website. I respond to every question I have, and I always try to make sure that you have the help you need. Or I'll point you in the right place to get it. So check all the description down below. Visit my Etsy shop for the files, my website for the files and a write-up, and my other videos on how to clamp. I'll put those right over here. Thanks for watching. I really hope this helps you with a CNC. It can be used on any CNC. You just got to edit it to the size of your CNC. Happy cutting. We'll see you next time.